Good morning. It is May 14th, 2022, and I think this is the 8th episode of Toilet Talk.
Or the ninth?
Or the 9th. It might be the 8th or the 9th episode of Toilet Talk. So
we don't count.
Well, normally I do count, but it's early on reasonably early on a Saturday morning. Anyway, so good morning. Welcome to the next episode of Toilet Talk with Dina Lynn, where shit gets real.
Yes, shit gets real on Toilet Talk. When you get close to plumbing fixtures, shit gets real.
Well, for you anyway. Not necessarily for everybody.
Well, okay, and yeah, don't be listening for noises because that's not part of this.
Now that we've established that fact, thank you, Dina Lynn.
It's not that real. It's not that real. We've been having all kinds of conversations lately. Well, all the time, and it's funny when conversations start overlapping with videos we're watching and with quotes and
Facebook
memes and movies, and it's just kind of cool when stuff starts ganging up on you all at once and the universe is trying to get your attention. Why don't you start talking about, well, you swallow your coffee first. And coffee is important when you're on the toilet.
Wait a minute, why am I the one that's talking? I thought you were going to be leading this with...
I'm trying to find that quote again.
So Dina and I were talking a little bit about the ideas of toxic femininity and toxic masculinity and how they show up in the world today, in our lives, in ourselves, in others, because we like to talk about other people. Yes, we do gossip some. Sorry, hopefully we don't disillusion you too much with that piece of information. We are truly human, but we try to be reasonably conscious about what we're saying and how we're saying it, and attempting to be really clear where our perceptions end and reality, which we can only glimpse a small sliver of, begins. Anyway, so she's still looking at her phone, and she was the one that wanted to talk about this, and so I'm sitting here like, okay, what can I say about toxic masculinity and toxic femininity?
I can, we'll get back to that part. So we hear a lot about toxic masculinity, and in fact it's repeated so often that people have started to think that masculinity itself and inclusively is toxic, which is so not the case. Masculinity is a natural part of humanity, predominantly in males, but even women have, we all have both. Think of the yin yang symbol. We all have some masculine and some feminine attributes within us. And what I've noticed is that toxic masculinity, you see it coming, okay? It's direct, it's intentional, and it comes at you. There's no mistaking toxic masculinity when you see it. There's aggressiveness to it, etc. Toxic femininity, on the other hand, is more covert. It's manipulative, it's backstabbing. So you don't necessarily know you just received it. The classic toxic feminine approach is to smile in your face and stab you in the back at the same time. So they're different forms. And so I made a post the other day that I delineated these two forms that we all have. There is such a thing as both toxic masculinity and toxic femininity, and I think it's important to know that. And then Robin added to that perspective with his comment.
Yes, so I tend to like to push back a little bit, when Dina says something like, always.
I can say always, just a lot of it, not a little bit.
Well, I have a lifetime of different observations than Dina has, and just because I have my observations and those seems like something that are reasonably poignant to me, doesn't mean that they're any more real than anybody else's perspective. It just means that I've seen different aspects show up in different ways, and so when it comes to toxic masculinity and toxic femininity, it's my belief that a lot of people out there seem to also equate toxic masculinity to specifically men and the patriarchy. And while that may traditionally be where that kind of energy and dynamic primarily functions, what I've also noticed is that um, because we've all essentially been raised in a patriarchal society, the the amount of toxic masculinity which can be at play both in a man and in a woman or those of transgender nature um, tends to be um, fairly toxic. How am I going to say? Fairly the overarching amount of toxic energy tends to be masculine within the range of sexual identifications, from male to female and everywhere in between or outside of that particular spectrum or model. And that toxic femininity also is not relegated to only the nature of a woman or somebody who identifies as female. That toxic femininity as an undercurrent runs through us all, and because we tend to make more, we tend to see more of the toxic masculinity, and because of what Dina was saying with the toxic femininity being kind of an undercurrent, that again all of that flows within all of us, and what we're not seeing a lot of is the healthy reflection of those energies coming out of the dynamic of right. the toxicity. Yeah. So anyway,
you'll often hear women, especially those who identify as feminists, saying, well, if women were in charge, we wouldn't be having XYZ. These issues that we're having culture-wide, war, et cetera, et cetera. The problem is that if the woman is at a level of development or health within herself that she has not transcended her toxicity, she hasn't developed enough to get to a more integral level of operating, it's just going to be a different flavor of shit that's happening. It's not going to be better just because it's female. So the notion that men are bad and women are wonderful and shiny and bright isn't, there's different. We can both have various stages of health and development. They're different, masculine and feminine, and we have them all within us. So whenever I am being aggressively, overtly going after something, lashing out in some kind of a way, I'm exhibiting toxic masculine behavior. And whenever I'm doing it covertly, manipulatively, trying to change things quietly behind the scenes, then I'm exhibiting toxic femininity. And we're all capable of both, just as the converse, we're all capable of healthy masculine and feminine behavior. So we all see the toxic, unhealthy stuff, right? We can see this all around us. What would be, by contrast, some healthy masculine and healthy feminine behaviors, attributes, developments?
I think that is a great place for you to keep on expounding on what
what he wants, what you can't see, is he wants to drink his coffee right now, and so I'm gonna buy some time.
Well, actually, that's not it. The reality is that she's much better at memorizing these types of characteristics and expounding on how they relate to an individual as well as a larger overarching picture than I am, to be honest, in this particular case. So
you're in charge of the forest and I'm in charge of the trees?
That sounds vaguely manipulative right there.
Well, I like to categorize and organize and all that fun stuff. All right, so let's just riff on this. What are some healthy masculine attributes? I would say one that comes to mind is protection. All right, let's talk about the light and the shadow side of these attributes. Protection can, on the shadow side, become control, domination, lording over. That's a different toilet. And what would be another healthy masculine attribute? Fixing things, okay? Like solving problems.
Right.
but the shadow side that
is codependency.
Codependency and that fix it mentality, not listening, but going right to solutions. There can be that shadow side.
Right. Well, you were talking about before, you see toxic masculinity or coming, but that's actually just an uh, overly aggressive form of simply being direct and
Right.
truthful.
Right. Yeah.
So truth with kindness is actually the combination of both
Yes.
a healthy masculine and a healthy feminine. Yes.
Well,
Attribute
and I've said many times,
you
know, kindness without truth is vapid, and truth without kindness is a weapon, or can be weaponized anyway. So what it's sounding like to me here is that there's a genuine benevolent impulse to anything that ends up being twisted, tainted, clouded over with our lenses of unresolved issues that can become toxic. If it's, but it starts with the genuine, I want to help, I want to fix, I want to make better. I would assume that's a masculine, taking initiative is a positive or authentic masculine impulse that can be turned into something negative when there's a shadow side, an unresolved issue.
So some of those same attributes that then represent healthy femininity would be something like receptivity, creating sacred or safe space, nurturing.
But that can turn into smothering.
That can turn into smothering. It can turn into
helplessness.
Helplessness, yeah.
Yeah. So if you are the recipient of someone who was offering to protect and help and serve, and you receive that, just take in, like the Dead Sea that has no outlet, it can only take in, then there's no life happening in there. Then what can happen is that the feminine receptor of the masculine protection and caretaking can actually become a victim, learned helplessness, where, oh, poor me, damsel in distress, I can't take care of me. Codependency on both ends of that spectrum can be quite unhealthy.
Right.
What would be another feminine, natural feminine attribute? Creativity. It's not relegated just to females, but I would say creativity, the ability to birth something new, would be a feminine attribute, whether it's being exhibited by a woman creating or by a man creating, which is often men. The male artists throughout history typically spoke of having a muse who was given feminine attributes, this feminine entity that would show up and collaborate with him, inspire him, dance with him in the creative process.
I wonder, what would then, if the muse is typically a feminine attribute, or associated with feminine energy, let's put it that way. I wonder if what then would be the male counterpart to that, being a muse.
Being a muse. Well, it's
no. So anyway, go ahead.
The word muse, which, if I'm getting this right, was connected to the word genius, which in Greek wisdom wasn't that we become a genius by either being gifted at something or working on a gift, working on a skill, that we were each born with a genius, which is our truest nature.
So what did Michael Mead say about? So he said that museum is
House of Muses.
Yeah, a house of muses.
It's a building filled with art that was inspired by muses, and it's,
and by each person's genius.
Yes. So we have this genius, and it's almost like the genius, which is internal, and the muse, which could be seen as experienced as anyway, as external. It comes to us. That those two do this thing inside us that produces. I know there are
creation.
Yes, there are times when I need to paint a thing, I need to write a thing, and I don't feel like it. and I get inspired. I wait for the muse to show up, but most often, if I just start, it's like the muse gets jealous that I'm doing this alone, and then it shows up. So I prime the pump, and then the muse joins in, and then I'm in the flow. That's the creative flow state, is when we are dancing, our genius is dancing with the muse. At least that's how I like to see it.
So I'm curious, and I know this is going to be a little bit of an aside, and I apologize for that, but if we looked at biology strictly in the human race, potentially in others, and we were to take that that archetype or that metaphor and utilize it in a way which talks about procreation, then it would seem to me that if the muse is the external inspiration for the internal creation, wouldn't then the energy of the muse be masculine?
Okay.
Traditionally? And
okay, so you're saying the genius, which is within us, is the feminine receptive part, and the muse is the initiatory external masculine part.
I'm asking the question. I don't know.
Penetrates the genius, so we're talking
penetrates
about
and fertilizes
cosmic sex that creates creativity.
The eros, yeah, the universal eros.
The little bang that creates.
Or sometimes anyway.
Well, the Big Bang was the origin of all life, and I've heard it said that matter, from which we get the word mother, matter, the material around the earth, is feminine, and consciousness is masculine, and consciousness penetrates and permeates all of matter. So it's not just inert, it's filled with the life of consciousness. But if consciousness has nowhere to go, if there's no matter to penetrate and permeate, then it's just this nebulous energy out there. These two...
It's chaos.
Yeah, well, it's chaos. It's potential
life,
energy, potential everything, potential creativity. But there seems to... I think we see fractals in nature and in our own lives with masculine and feminine humans creating new life with egg and sperm and all of that we know that causes life. Fractals are... It's a hint of reality on deeper and lower levels. It's reflective of
it's a glimpse.
Yes, it's a glimpse. And we see these patterns everywhere. So it makes sense to me then that anything that creates life would have a masculine and a feminine, yin and yang, coming together to make a new whole.
Right.
Yeah. So the universe is having sex with itself, is what you're saying.
And this is a slightly X-rated, or at least R-rated version of Toilet Talk for today.
PG.
So
It's
PG-13.
We're not
PG-13. Well,
we could use sock monkeys to show how this works.
Well, this discussion would probably not be allowed in certain circles until after the age of 18 or 25, depending on the nature of the circle.
Yeah, because nobody under 18 sits on a toilet. You know this.
Or has any idea of what sex is or anything like that. Yeah.
Now there's a healthy way of talking about sexuality that is informative, and I raised 8 kids. I talk to them age appropriately about sexuality their whole lives. If we can naturalize it and normalize it and make it a part of the human experience, it doesn't need to be something that is repressed and then we are thrown out into the world where we're shocked by what's out there, or it's the forbidden fruit that gives it more of an edge. And there should be a way to both talk about sexuality in a way that's healthy and age appropriate, and also, when appropriate, as adults, to play with the edge, to enjoy.
But we're getting slightly off topic of masculinity and femininity. Yes, we just did that. Sorry.
I'm not apologizing.
Foreshadowing for a future Toilet Talk. Yes.
Why have we not done that one yet?
I don't know.
Well, it's weird that we haven't talked about sexuality.
We will talk about sexuality soon. No guarantees on when, but soon. So in a cosmic scale, it might be 10 million years. Yeah. But hey, whatever. Anyway. So back to masculinity and femininity. I think one of the things that I'd like to offer is that we're in this particularly poignantly energetic time in our political systems and global political systems, and and it's a mess. It's a mess
Everything,
for all of us.
not
It's a
just
mess for the
politically.
left. It's a mess for the right. It's a mess for everybody in between.
Competing crises.
Yeah, it's competing crises, and you know the latest election prompted a lot of posts that said, well, we should have female leaders, and they're the ones that need to take us into the game B. If you're not familiar with game A, game B concept, look up Daniel Schmachtenberger and the Sense Making series, What Rebel Wisdom. They have a lot of great podcasts about uh, the transition from our game A society to game B society.
Yeah, but they don't sit on toilets while they're talking.
This is true, but they are rather mentally and emotionally stimulating. Um, so there's been this talk about needing female leaders to take us into the next stage of our societal structuring, and the assumption is that because a leader may be female, she's not going to handle things in a traditionally patriarchal or toxically masculine way, which many of our leaders have.
Well, that's bogus, because unfortunately, given that we've all been entrenched in patriarchy for the past, I would say, approximately 12,000 years, it's like the water the fish swims in. We don't see it because it's just such an inherent part of what we're immersed in. And therefore, when a woman comes to in a position of authority, of leadership, what she does is not exhibit feminine strength. She exhibits masculine strength, because that's all she's allowed to do. That's all that gets recognized as authentic power.
Right. And not that she's not capable of leading from her feminine energy, her healthy feminine energy, let alone her healthy masculine energy.
Right.
But it's been a system that's been immersed in that masculine energy.
We have a lot of feminine supposed strengths, which is no more than patriarchy in drag. It's just patriarchy with a skirt on and high heels, and it's the same toxic mess. It's not any different. It's just got a female body around it.
Right. So when it comes to leading, it's not about whether somebody is male or female. Right. And I've seen this post.
Are they healthy or not?
Are they healthy or not? It's that's the question, and we do nothing to vet our leaders in a way which actually we don't look at mental health. Mm-hmm. We don't require any kind of analysis. We don't even encourage.
Right. They get a physical exam to make sure they're competent physically. There's no psychological or mental examination. So
there's some, but not much.
There's no testing. You've got people who end up as psychopaths and sociopaths in places of leadership because they've got those cutthroat skills that get them to the top, but then they're not qualified. So they forget that leading.
They're not qualified to lead.
Leading is leading by example. It's not by overlording.
And oftentimes it's leading from the middle of the pack.
Yeah. And to be servants. They're supposed to be serving us. They're supposed to be representing us. And that's a different topic altogether. Taxation without representation is illegal, but it's happening. And it's not just a masculine-feminine issue. And it's not that if we had women leaders, they would save the day.
It's about integration.
Yes. And it's about... Well, first of all, one of the hallmarks of feminine, healthy leadership is that the feminine recognizes that she wants the masculine alongside her, working in sync, working together. Feminine, there is no true matriarchy where women want to lord over men, unless it's toxic masculinity within the women saying negative things about men, as if misogyny is wrong. Well, so is misandry, which is to repress the masculine, or to call it toxic, or to lord over it. If one's wrong, so's the other, and we can't solve a problem with the same energy that caused the problem in the first place. It's just the pendulum swing, and it's not healthy. What we need is balance. What we need is for each of us to have our own internal balance of masculine and feminine on a healthy, well-developed level, which means self-actualization work, emotional healing work, shadow work, all of the internal work. And when we've done that, then we're in a position of leading our own lives healthily, having healthy interactions with other humans, and only then if we're qualified, could we be in a position of leadership? And right now, what we've got is a mess from the top down. We don't have genuine, healthy leaders, male or female, and nobody in the wings who looks like they're. Those recently who've gotten to the top are not those who have done their work, and it shows. We've got a lot of traumatized, unresolved people leading over us, creating more of a mess.
I think there are some leaders out there. We've seen some political leaders and world leaders who have a more balanced and more healthy internal set of energies, morals, ideals. But they're few and far between, and they are often inherently stymied by the system within which we're still operating, which is crumbling.
Yeah.
It's crumbling, but it's what was it Michael Meade was saying? It's like we're in the time of the ashes. So our current society, the current form of civilization that we have, is burning down. We don't know what the next set looks like.
We don't know what's coming. We're not equipped to know what's coming. The caterpillar that goes into the cocoon or the chrysalis cannot fathom what it's going to be like coming out, and it has to dissolve completely into goo before and then there's a struggle to come out. So we are somewhere in that, the bloated, all-consuming caterpillar. Yeah, we're somewhere in that goo state.
That should be a technical term. Goo state.
Goo state. Like, excuse me, I can't help you today. I'm in my goo state. Go find help somewhere else. That should be a thing. Yeah. We can't know what's coming. All we know is that what we've known is dying, and what we are yet to be has not yet emerged, and that causes a lot of stress to be in this no man's land in the middle, where we don't know where to turn. We feel like there's no foundation holding us up. And so if you're feeling conflicted, confused, chaotic, that's normal right now. That's natural right now. And the idea is to get your own strength from inside, to find your own solace and strength to who you are and why you're here on the inside, to be able to weather this, because we're not going to get it from external structures that are
currently in place.
They're crumbling.
But I would like to add to that, one of the really important things is, yes, the internalization, turning to the internal to do our internal work is really important. It's where we have to start. And as we take those pieces little by little, discovering things about ourselves, doing our best to discover our own shadows, looking at where we're healthy, where we're not healthy, both toxic or both masculine and feminine energy. The other way to really start building on that is to seek out people who are doing the same kind of work, who have the ability to sit down and have real, genuine, vulnerable conversations about both what we're experiencing internally and individually, as well as sharing that with others. Yeah. It's about circle technology. Yes. It's about honoring where each other is at without commenting or without critiquing where each other's at. It's about support of the pieces and parts which make us up, which we're exploring and understanding we're not alone.
Right. And that happens, in my experience, the more work we do internally, the more we cannot help but connect with others. The more I've gotten to know myself, the more I have recognized simultaneously that I am an intricate, inherently connected part of everyone else, that everything is one. There's one field, there's one singularity in this multiplicity of forms, and we're meant to work as cohesive units, as species, as ecosystems, way beyond fractals again. So the more work we do internally, when it's authentic, we will want to reach out. We will want to reach across supposed divides, because these divisions we have they're the real problem. If we're going to look at it politically, the right is not the problem, the left is not the problem, the division is the problem. And we need all kinds of perspectives and all kinds of people to form a cohesive unit. This nonsense of turning on each other is actually the problem.
Right. Yeah, divisions are really helpful when we're trying to categorize and pull apart the nuance of a situation or of a thing or of an idea.
And then celebrate the distinctions.
And then celebrate the distinctions, the
threatened.
distinctiveness, the diversity. But at the same time, we can't simply. It's unhealthy to simply focus on the diversity or the distinctions without also recognizing how all of those distinctions make a system which is in its healthiest form works together, which is what
Yes.
the human body is,
Yes.
which is what the environment is, which is what the solar system is, which is what the universe
Yes,
is.
diversity is crucial. I mean, if we just think about what we were talking about before, not to bring it back to sex, but I'm going to bring it back to sex. If there's when a female is wanting to procreate to produce the most healthy, viable offspring, she will look for a masculine partner who is different from her, not like her kinfolk, because that's kind of incestuous, you know. But that's inbreeding, not healthy for the offspring. So that difference is what creates a diverse individual who has a better chance of survival. So this notion that we need to only connect with like-minded is very myopic. We're not going to grow. We're not going to have our views challenged. Robin and I are not the same people. I mean, first of all, there's the masculine and the feminine. We are 9 3/4 years apart. We have a lot of similarities, a lot of overlap, where we have commonality. We can understand each other and meet each other in a field that is rich and comfortable in its overlap. But we also have our distinctions, which enhance each other. I will talk about a thing, he will challenge me, he will say, but also, or and, yes, yes, that's true, and here's something else to add to that. And the more I can see, you know, if the truth is like a gem with multifaceted, all kinds of facets all over it. If I'm only looking through my little facet, I'm going to have a very small viewpoint. But if I say to the person next to me, hey, what do you see? And then I say to someone on the other side of the gem, what do you see? Then I get to see more of the gem of truth, because truth is expansive and stretchy. It's not black and white.
Right.
Truth grows as we're able to take in more of it. And you know, we just hit on like several different topics under this.
Well, I know, and so you know, here we get back into the divisiveness or the recombination of all that we are. So both the interconnectivity as well as the individuality, which are both really important characteristics of growing healthy. The tendency to divide, the divisiveness, the myopic nature of creating divisions, is literally a protection method which is being used by so many of the groups out there these days, which tend to focus on the small little toxic characteristics of what they don't like about society. So you can take any movement, and if it's only solely focused on itself, on its own rights, on its own privileges, on its own needs or victimization, it's creating division, and that's what's continuing to fuel this toxic society. The toxic nature of society is nobody is looking out beyond themselves to include others in it.
Which goes back to the quote that I wanted to find that I couldn't find, by Michael Meade. And basically what he was saying is, if we as individuals cannot see our own shadow, our own unresolved issues, we feel the pain of it, but we don't want to look at it, so we repress it. And when we do this, we also then cannot see the pain of another. We can't have compassion and empathy with another person's struggle. So we're cut off from our own pain, we're cut off from seeing another's pain.
So we project it outward.
But it has to go somewhere. That energy has to go somewhere. So what we do is we take our shadows, our blind spots, and we scapegoat them. We project them out onto the other guy, the other team, the other person in a conflict, and we throw it on them, and we sometimes do it aggressively and violently. Right. Which explains why there's so much of that going on in our culture. We are all traumatized. We're not looking at our own stuff. We're repressing it, which means it goes out there onto somebody else. And the hope is When we project it outward, out there, we can see it out there and do something about it.
Internally, yeah. Realize that it's what is that it's what is within us that needs to be worked on, and this gets. Go ahead.
If we spot it, we got it. One question I like. I'm not always successful with this, but one thing I'm not. I'm just not. I intend to ask this question when I am irked by somebody else or a situation. The question that serves me best is to say, what is it about you that I don't like about me? Because if I'm irked by it, if I spot it, I've got it. And the converse works. If I envy something in someone, something that I like, oh, they're so good at that thing, and I feel that feeling in me. If I spot it, I got it. So what is it about you that I don't yet appreciate about me? If we can start to realize that out there is a projection screen of what's in here, we can start to do our own internal work, which then spreads into work for people around us. 'Cause I can't fix anybody else, but I can fix me and become a contagious catalyst if it's genuine.
Right. So, God, we could keep on going and going and going.
We got to go for a run.
I know. There's this idea of projection we were also talking about in a shamanic way, and I don't know that we want to try and get into that right now. But I'm gonna leave them something to think about.
All right, dangle them.
Yeah.
Do it.
So if indeed we are projecting our own unhealed internal energy or dynamic out onto the world, and I already have my own ideas about this because of my explorations into shamanic culture and animistic tradition and ceremony. If we project our unhealthy stuff outward so that we can hopefully see it, what does that look like to you? What does it look like in your own personal life? And are you willing to be honest with yourself and examine the things that you don't see in yourself but do see out in society? And do you find that a healthy dynamic, or do you find it an unhealthy dynamic for you, and why? So you guys get to do homework.
Ooh.
Neener.
Go forth and ask that question. What is it about you I don't like about me? And that's courage right there.
And this can be about energy, like masculine and feminine energy, both toxic and healthy. And this doesn't have to be just an exercise of projecting out the bad stuff. So you could also go on projecting out the good stuff. However, love and light only, that doesn't heal anything. We can't ignore the things inside us which are killing us for the sake of only looking at love and light. So
I should make that sound from the toilet when you're not seeing what I did.
Yeah. So anyway, it sounds like we have lots of Easter eggs in here, lots of not Easter eggs, lots of foreshadowing we could use to do more episodes in the future. And I think we should probably wrap it up. We're hitting almost 40 minutes here. So, and yes, Dina said we need to go out for a run. So obviously we need to go out for a run. That's her masculine saying, hey, we're going to do this. So.
I need to initiate this thing. Get this show on the road.
Right. All right. Well, happy Saturday to you all. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Toilet Talk where the shit gets real.
Shit gets real.
See you guys later.